Good evening, everyone. Tonight's story starts with a dream, and it ends with a photograph. The photograph was taken inside the dream, and when the man woke up, it was on his real phone. I'm going to tell you the story of Adam Ellis and Dear David. This is not a legend. It is not a piece of folklore. It is a documented series of events that unfolded in real time, on social media, with photographs and audio recordings and video footage, over the course of approximately 1 year, beginning in August of a recent year. Adam Ellis is an illustrator who lived alone in a New York City apartment. His apartment was on the upper floor of a 2-story unit. The lower unit had been occupied by a previous tenant who had moved out, and Adam had transferred upstairs. He was a social media person, the kind of person who documented his life online. He had a following. He had no particular reason to construct a hoax, and the evidence he accumulated over the year would prove difficult to explain away even for skeptics. It began with sleep paralysis. If you have ever experienced sleep paralysis, you know what it is. You are between sleep and waking. Your body is completely frozen, you cannot move any part of it. Your eyes may be open. And sometimes, in that paralyzed state, you perceive things in the room with you. The scientific explanation is that your brain is partially awake while the motor inhibition of REM sleep has not fully released. The visual cortex produces hallucinations. You see things that are not there. That is the scientific explanation. Adam was in this state when he first saw the child. There was a green rocking chair at the foot of Adam's bed. He had not put it there. It had simply been in the apartment when he moved in. He had not thought much about it. In his sleep paralysis state, he saw a child sitting in that chair. A child who appeared to be a boy, with a head that seemed slightly too large for his body. The child was sitting very still, watching him. Adam could not move. He could not speak. He could only lie there and look back. Then it was over. He woke up fully. The chair was empty. He told himself it was a dream and went back to sleep. A few days later, he had another dream. This time he was in a library. Libraries appear frequently in this story. They seem to be the location where information is conveyed, where rules are explained. In this library dream, a girl approached him. She was young, perhaps 10 or 11. She said to him, "You have already seen him." Adam asked who she was talking about. She said, "Dear David. He is dead. Every night, at exactly midnight, he appears. You are allowed to ask him 2 questions. Only 2. If you ask a third question, he will kill you." That was the information. 2 questions at midnight. Never a third. Adam filed this away as the content of a strange dream. Then, several nights later, the child was back in the chair. And Adam, in the dream state, in the half-waking state, with the child sitting at the foot of his bed in the green chair, asked, "How did you die?" The child said, "A shelf fell. Someone pushed a heavy shelf onto my head." And then Adam, before he could stop himself, asked, "Who pushed it?" The child stopped. The atmosphere in the room changed. Adam realized, with the full cold clarity of dream logic, what he had just done. He had asked a third question. He woke up. He lay there in the dark, his heart pounding, staring at the empty green chair. He told this story on Twitter. He had no particular plan for it. He just wanted to document it, the way he documented other things in his life. He posted it, went to sleep, and woke up to thousands of people following along. I want to spend more time on the rules, because I think they are the most psychologically interesting part of the story. The rules as given to Adam: you can ask Dear David 2 questions at midnight. Only 2. If you ask a third, he will kill you. Think about the structure of this. Why 2 questions? Why not 1 or unlimited? And why does the third question specifically trigger death? I've been turning this over for a while, and I think the answer has to do with what questions are for. The first question establishes basic facts. The second question goes one level deeper. But the third question, in almost any interrogation, in almost any serious conversation, is when you start getting at the thing the other person doesn't want to say. The first 2 questions give you the surface. The third question starts to uncover what's underneath. In folklore, 3 is almost universally the number of completion. 3 wishes. 3 riddles. 3 trials. 2 is preliminary, it establishes a relationship, creates a dynamic. 3 closes it. 3 takes you past the point of no return. The rule is not arbitrary. It is designed to allow you enough contact with the dead to understand the basics, how he died, what happened to him, while preventing you from pushing further into territory that perhaps the dead cannot survive being questioned about, or that the living cannot survive knowing. Adam broke the rule by asking who pushed the shelf. He asked how David died, the shelf fell, an accident, and then he asked who pushed it. The first question establishes that David is dead. The second establishes the manner. The third establishes something more dangerous, that the death was not an accident. That David was murdered. That there is a specific guilty party who belongs to the living world. When you reach the third question, you are no longer asking about the dead. You are asking about the living. You are implicating the present. And whatever David is, whatever the ghost child represents, he cannot or will not go there. The third question, in other words, is not a rule about death. It is a rule about justice. You are allowed to understand what happened. You are not allowed to pursue it. Adam pursued it. And what followed, the year of escalating disturbances, the evidence that accumulated, the photographs in the dream, may be understood as David's response to that breach. Not malicious, exactly. Not punishment in any human sense. But a kind of consequence that flows naturally from having pushed past the boundary. You asked. I showed you. This is the thing about ghost stories. The truly frightening ones are not about random malevolence. They are about debts. About the consequences of breaking rules that exist for a reason. Adam broke a rule and David did not disappear. He showed up. Again and again, bringing more and more evidence of his own existence, as if the question that had been asked, "Who did this to me?" had opened a door that could not be closed again until something was resolved. What resolution would even look like in a case like this, I do not know. The film was made. The story was told to millions of people. Dear David is more known now than anyone who might have been responsible for his death, in whatever reality the story points toward. Maybe that is resolution enough. Adam had 2 cats. Anyone who has lived with cats knows that they are sensitive to things humans are not. For several consecutive nights after the dream about the third question, Adam's cats began behaving strangely. Every night, at around midnight, the time that had been named as the hour of David's appearance, both cats would walk to the front door of the apartment and sit there. Together. Perfectly still. Staring at the door. Not at something behind the door. At the door itself. Or at something just in front of it, in the space between them and the door, that Adam could not see. This continued for several nights. Every night, around midnight, both cats in position, staring. Adam got up and opened the door. There was nothing on the other side. The hallway was empty. He sat up for a while, watching his cats, who eventually relaxed and wandered away as midnight passed. He went back to bed. Then came the Polaroid photos. Adam bought a Polaroid camera, a physical, instant film camera, specifically because he wanted to document whatever was happening. Digital photos can be manipulated. Polaroids develop in front of you, no editing possible. He walked through his apartment taking photos. The photos of most rooms came out normally. But the hallway, the long corridor leading from the front door deeper into the apartment, produced anomalies. Multiple attempts. Multiple photos. The hallway consistently came out strange. Darker than it should be. A shape in the corner that wasn't visible to the eye. In one photo, what appeared to be a figure. He posted the photos. The internet, as it does, analyzed them intensely. Many viewers identified something in the images. Others said it was his finger on the lens. Adam tested this specifically. He took a photo with his finger deliberately blocking part of the lens. Then another without his finger. The results were different from the anomalous hallway photos. The hallway photos were not explainable by a misplaced finger. Then he found the recording app. He downloaded a smartphone application that monitored his apartment for sound during the night. The app would record automatically whenever it detected audio above a threshold, logging each recording separately. He went to sleep with the app running. The next morning, he found 33 separate recordings from the night. 30 were unremarkable. Background noise, his own movements in sleep, nothing notable. 3 were different. Completely unlike the others. The first of the 3 was a crackling electronic sound, like the interference of an old television on a dead channel. The second was a sharp clicking sound followed by what could be described as a rhythmic striking, something being hit repeatedly, at a steady pace. The third was a continuation of the electronic crackling, followed by silence. These 3 recordings were clustered together in time. Not spread across the night. 3 consecutive recordings, one after another, in a span of a few minutes. He checked the timestamps. All 3 had been recorded at 3 a.m. He began monitoring more carefully. And what he found was that at approximately 3 a.m. every night, his recording app activated. Every night. Without fail. For several minutes around that specific hour, something in his apartment was producing enough sound to trigger the recorder. And the recordings consistently sounded like nothing he could identify, not his own sounds, not mechanical sounds from the building, not audio he could source. He posted about this too. The audience following his story was now in the tens of thousands. People from all over the world were reading these updates in real time. Some of them stayed awake past midnight to read the posts as they came in. And then David came back in his sleep. This time the dream was different. David did not sit in the green chair. David was standing. He took Adam by the hand and led him somewhere, down a dark corridor, into a space that felt like an abandoned warehouse. And then David took Adam's hand and pressed it against a wall. The wall was cold. And then Adam woke up. He lay there for a moment, in the way you do after a vivid dream, gathering himself. Then he looked at his arm. There was a red mark on his skin. A handprint. The size and shape of a child's hand, pressed into the skin of his forearm, the way a hand leaves a mark when it grips flesh. He photographed it and posted the photo. Thousands of people saw it. I want to think about the evidence more carefully, because I think it rewards close examination. The cats are where I always start when I think about this case. Animals occupy an interesting position in ghost stories across every culture. Dogs bark at things humans cannot perceive. Cats stare at empty spaces. Horses refuse to enter locations their riders cannot identify as threatening. This is documented well enough across enough independent sources to be taken seriously, even without a clear explanation. One possibility is that animals are responding to stimuli in frequency ranges or sensory channels that humans cannot detect. Infrasound, sound below the range of human hearing, can cause feelings of unease and has been associated with reported hauntings in several cases. Animals hear ranges we don't. If something in Adam's apartment was producing infrasound, his cats would respond to it while Adam would only feel vaguely uncomfortable if he felt anything at all. There are also electromagnetic fields, which some animals appear sensitive to. Changes in air pressure, temperature fluctuations too small for human perception, vibrations through floors and walls. The animal nervous system is, in some respects, a more sensitive instrument than ours. The cat sitting at the door at midnight, every night, for multiple consecutive nights, this is not random behavior. Cats do not perform rituals. Whatever they were responding to something consistent, something that occurred at the same time and place, night after night. Then there is the 3 a.m. phenomenon, which is worth discussing separately. 3 in the morning occupies a specific place in supernatural tradition. The Catholic tradition calls it the witching hour. The inverse of 3 p.m., the hour of divine death in Christian chronology, 3 a.m. is the hour of maximum distance from the sacred. In Japanese folklore, the hour of the ox falls around 2 a.m. to 3 a.m., which is the time associated with curses and hauntings, as we discussed in a previous episode. The consistency with which Adam's recording app triggered at 3 a.m., not 2 a.m., not 4 a.m., but specifically 3 a.m., is notable. Either something was genuinely producing sound at that specific hour, every night, or Adam's own psychology was generating experiences around a time his mind had already marked as significant. Both possibilities are interesting. If something was genuinely happening at 3 a.m., what? What produces sound in an empty apartment at the same hour every night? Not mechanical systems, HVAC and plumbing don't run on ghost schedules. Not other tenants, the lower floor was unoccupied. The recordings Adam captured were not ambient noise. They were specific, anomalous, unlike anything else in the 30 other recordings from the same nights. If his psychology was generating it, the human mind is capable of more than most people realize. The sleep paralysis episodes themselves involve the mind producing experiences so vivid they feel physically real. The question of where the mind ends and external reality begins is not always clear. I lean towards saying, something was happening. I do not know what. The recordings exist. Multiple sound engineers and audio analysts looked at them and could not identify a mundane source. The 3 a.m. timing is consistent enough to be more than chance. And the Polaroid photographs, the hallway photographs, were analyzed by professional photographers who could not attribute the anomalies to lens artifacts, user error, or any standard photographic phenomenon. The evidence, taken together, is not easily dismissed. It can be dismissed, you can always find a way to dismiss individual pieces of evidence. But the totality, accumulated over a year, with consistent detail, is harder to walk away from than any single incident. Whatever Adam was living with, he lived with it for a year. And whatever it was patient. For the next several weeks, Adam documented everything. He noticed that the green chair, the original green chair where he had first seen David, was moving. Not dramatically. Not in ways he could catch on camera. But between nights, between hours, the chair was not always in the same position. He would place it in one location in the room and find it slightly different the next morning. A few inches. A rotation. Small shifts that could almost be explained as his own memory being imperfect. Except that Adam began documenting the chair's position deliberately. Photographing it before sleep. Comparing the photos to its position when he woke. And in these side-by-side comparisons, the chair had moved. Something about this particular piece of furniture seemed to be the center of what was happening. David had appeared in it. It moved. And Adam made a decision. He moved the chair out of his bedroom, into storage. He physically relocated it to a closet, closed the door on it, and tried to treat it as a neutral object rather than a focal point. For a night or two, things seemed quieter. And then the chair appeared in his living room. He had not moved it. He had not opened the storage closet. The chair was in his living room. Adam's response to this development was rational, in a particular way. He decided to leave. Not permanently, he could not simply abandon his apartment. But he reasoned that when he had first moved from the lower floor to the upper floor of his building, the disturbances had briefly stopped. The hauntings seemed to be tied to his proximity. If he removed himself from the space for a period of time, perhaps the pattern would interrupt itself. He planned a trip. And before he left, he installed a security camera in his apartment, a wireless camera with night vision and motion detection that streamed footage to his phone. The camera would watch the apartment while he was gone. If anything happened, he would know. He left the city. The first night of his trip, at 11 p.m., his phone sent him a notification from the camera. Motion detected in his apartment. He opened the footage. The apartment was empty of people. But the camera had caught something. Something that viewers who saw the footage frame by frame identified near the edge of the image, partially visible, in the part of the room near the front door. Adam watched the footage multiple times. He could see it, an anomaly, a shape that did not correspond to any object he owned or any effect of light and shadow he could account for. He stayed on his trip. He tried to continue his vacation. And for the most part, the distance seemed to help. Nights passed quietly. He began to feel that his plan was working. And then, on the last day of his trip, just before returning home, he opened the camera feed one more time. The green chair was in the middle of his living room. He had stored it in the closet before leaving. The closet door was closed. The chair was in the middle of his living room. He came home. That night, sleep paralysis returned. He was lying in bed when it happened, the familiar total body freeze, the inability to move anything, eyes open in the dark. And he felt the presence. Something was at the foot of his bed, moving toward him. He could feel it approaching even before he could see anything. The weight of attention. The sense of a directed gaze. And then in the dark he could make out the shape, a small figure, moving with a slow and deliberate pace from the foot of the bed toward where he lay, his arm pinned beneath him, unable to move. He willed his arm to move. Concentrated everything on moving one hand. Managed to get his fingers onto his phone. He opened the camera. He pointed it in the direction of what was approaching him. He pressed the shutter. The phone took several photos in rapid succession as the figure moved closer, frame by frame, advancing across the dark room toward his frozen body, the face gradually becoming clearer with each shot, and Adam lying there unable to run, unable to speak, able only to photograph what was coming toward him. And then he was awake. Fully awake. The room was empty. He sat up in bed. His heart was going very fast. He told himself it was a dream, it was sleep paralysis, it was his mind. Then he looked at his phone. There were photographs on it. The green chair deserves its own section. In horror, objects are often the most frightening elements, more frightening than figures, more frightening than sounds. Because an object is undeniable. You can tell yourself the figure was a shadow, the sound was the building. An object that has moved is harder to rationalize. It was there. Now it is here. Something moved it. The green rocking chair in Adam's apartment functions as the clearest physical evidence in the case. Not photographs, not recordings, a piece of furniture that repeatedly appeared in places it had not been placed. Adam responded to this with a kind of practical determination that I find admirable. He did not immediately flee. He did not call a priest. He did not simply document and report. He tried to solve the problem directly. If the chair keeps appearing near his bed, remove the chair from the bedroom. If the chair keeps appearing in the apartment, store it in the closet. If the closet doesn't hold it, he will try something else. This is the behavior of someone who is genuinely experiencing something and trying to manage it, not the behavior of someone constructing a narrative. The chair's behavior also follows a pattern that appears in other documented cases of poltergeist activity. Objects do not teleport dramatically in poltergeist cases, they move when not observed. They appear in slightly wrong places. The movement happens in the gap between observation and non-observation, in the moment you looked away. This is psychologically very effective. You cannot catch it. You can only document before and after. The uncertainty is part of what makes it unbearable. You cannot be certain you are not imagining it, even as the photographs show you that you are not. The chair appeared in Adam's living room after being stored in a closed closet. He documented this. He photographed the chair in the closet before leaving. He photographed it in the living room when he returned. The photos exist with their timestamps. And then the vacation, the deliberate attempt to remove himself from the situation, and the chair appearing on the security camera feed while he was away. The apartment was empty. No one had access. The camera footage showed the chair in a different position than when he left. At this point in the story, Adam had accumulated more physical documentation of anomalous activity than most people ever produce in a lifetime. And none of it could rest on misremembering or misperception. The timestamps were automatic. The photographs were dated. The recordings were logged by an app. This is what distinguishes the Dear David case from typical ghost stories. Typical ghost stories are experience-based. I saw something, I felt something, I heard something. They live in the gap between perception and report. The Dear David case lives in the physical record. The artifacts are real. The question of what produced them is what remains open. I think about the moment Adam came home from his trip and opened his apartment to find the green chair in the middle of the room. After a week away. After a week of trying to believe the distance had helped. After a week of relative calm. He had tried everything available to him. He had stored the chair. He had left the city. He had installed surveillance. He had documented everything. And the chair was in the middle of the room. There is a specific quality to that feeling, the feeling of having done everything reasonable and still failing to resolve the situation, that I think is what made readers of Adam's story feel such a particular kind of dread. It was not the drama of a monster. It was the quiet, relentless persistence of something that could not be managed. You can escape a monster. You cannot escape something that simply continues, patiently, in your absence, waiting for you to come home. The photos were real. Not photos from a previous time, not photos he had forgotten he had taken, not photos taken by someone else. Photos taken in the last few minutes, timestamped to the current night, showing his dark bedroom from the angle of someone lying in bed. The image is sequential, and in the image is a shape advancing from the far end of the room toward the camera. In the last of the photos, the shape was very close. Close enough that the features were partially visible. A child's face. Eyes that were wrong, the sockets prominent, the gaze fixed directly at the lens. A head slightly too large for the body. Adam posted the photos. The internet had been following this story for almost a year. Tens of thousands of people had been reading each update. And the response to the dream photographs taken inside a sleep paralysis episode that somehow appeared on a real device, was unlike any previous response in the thread. The story was shared hundreds of thousands of times within days. Media outlets covered it. Podcasts dedicated episodes to it. The photographs, grainy and dark and inexplicable, circulated everywhere. People debated the explanation endlessly. Hoax was the most common theory. Adam had faked it for attention, for followers, as an elaborate performance piece. This theory would make sense except that the story had been running for almost a year, with consistent detail, in real time, before the photographs arrived. The amount of sustained commitment required for a year-long hoax is not nothing. And Adam was not famous before this. He was a social media illustrator with a moderate following, not someone with the resources or motivation to construct an elaborate production. Others proposed that the photographs were taken during a dissociative state, that Adam had genuinely not been conscious of taking them, that his body had acted while his mind was in the paralysis state. This is medically possible. Sleep paralysis and its associated hypnagogic states can produce behaviors the waking mind does not remember. This explanation would mean Adam's body took the photos. But the photos still show what they show. There is no explanation that makes the photographs comfortable. And then Hollywood called. The producer who acquired the rights to Adam's story was a man named Dan Lin. He is Taiwanese American, born in Taiwan, one of the most successful producers working in American film at the time. If you have seen the Terminator franchise sequels, or the IT films, the clown horror films based on Stephen King, you are familiar with his work. He specializes in films with an edge of the genuinely disturbing. He saw Adam's Twitter thread and decided it should be a movie. The Dear David film went into development. It would be based on the actual documented events, the year of posts, the photographs, the recordings, the green chair. A film built from real evidence. Some people, hearing about the Hollywood deal, concluded that the whole thing had been a publicity stunt orchestrated from the beginning. A manufactured viral story designed to attract film interest. But consider the timeline. The story ran for almost a year before Hollywood got involved. The early months, the cat behavior, the Polaroid anomalies, the 3 a.m. recordings, generated no particular film buzz. Adam was posting to a few thousand followers, not pitching to studios. And the deal came through the producer seeing the story, not through Adam approaching the industry. The usual shape of a manufactured stunt does not look like this. I am not telling you what to conclude. I am telling you that the evidence is real, the photographs exist, the recordings exist, and the film was made. I want to share something personal now. I have my own small version of this kind of story. I was working late one night. In my house, I was the only one there. I was on the second floor, at my desk, and I heard a sound from below, the sound of something moving through the first floor quickly. Not a slow, quiet sound. A rapid, energetic sound, like someone running through the downstairs rooms. I sat completely still. I listened. The sound stopped. I went downstairs. I checked every room. I went to the front door. It was locked. I checked the back. Locked. All the windows. Nothing had been disturbed. There was no one in the house. I went back upstairs. I told myself it was the building settling, the pipes, any of the explanations we use for these things. The next day, I looked at the security camera footage from that night. In the footage, at the timestamp corresponding to when I heard the sound, there is a hand visible at the edge of the frame. Just at the corner of the camera's field of view, near the front door. A hand and part of an arm, at the level of the door handle. On the inside of a locked door. The footage does not show who the hand belongs to. It shows a hand. On the inside of a locked door. And then it is gone. I have not found an explanation for this. I am not saying the house is haunted. I am not saying anything supernatural was present. I am saying that the footage shows a hand in a place where there was no one, and I do not know what to do with that information. Adam Ellis does not know what to do with his photographs either. What I find interesting about both stories, about Dear David and about the footage I cannot explain, is the quality of evidence. These are not reports of feelings, of atmospheres, of the sense that something was present. These are photographs and recordings and timestamp data. Physical artifacts that exist and that resist simple explanation. The green chair is still out there somewhere. The photographs are still on Adam's phone. The footage from my security camera is still on the hard drive. Evidence that cannot be fully explained does not disappear simply because we have not found the explanation. It just waits. Good night. Lock your doors. And maybe, tonight, don't ask the third question. Whatever the first two answers are, they are enough. I want to return to the photographs, because I think they require more attention than I've given them. The photographs taken from inside a dream that appeared on Adam's real phone. This is the detail that separates the Dear David case from every other ghost story I know. Not the haunting itself. Not the evidence that accumulated. That part, as unusual as it is, fits within the general category of things people have reported for centuries. The photographs from inside the dream are different. They represent, if genuine, a transfer of information from a state of consciousness that should not be capable of producing a physical record. When you dream, you do not operate your phone. Your body is in sleep paralysis, physically immobilized. You cannot take a photograph in a dream. The dream is in your mind. Your hands are on your bed. And yet, photographs, time-stamped to that night, from the angle of someone lying in bed, showing sequential images of a dark figure approaching. There are several possible explanations, and I want to go through them honestly. The first is that Adam took the photographs in a dissociative state, not consciously, not deliberately, but while in some intermediate phase between sleep and waking that allowed his body to act while his mind experienced the dream. This is medically documented. There are cases of people performing complex behaviors during sleep paralysis without conscious awareness. He photographed the dark room in that state. His mind interpreted what he photographed as the figure from his dream. This explanation requires, the photos are of a dark bedroom, and Adam's mind constructed the figure he saw in them. Possible. Except that others who saw the photographs reported the same shape Adam reported. The figure is visible to independent viewers who did not know what they were supposed to see. The second explanation is that Adam is a skilled enough photographer and illustrator to construct convincing ghost photographs. This is possible. He is, professionally, a visual artist. But the photographs do not look constructed. They look like what they are, panicked snapshots taken in the dark from a prone position. The third explanation is the one I cannot dismiss despite wanting to. That something was in the room. That Adam photographed it. And that the experience of being paralyzed and unable to escape while photographing it produced the dream state, the subjective experience of being in a nightmare, superimposed over something that was happening physically in the room. Sleep paralysis researchers have noted that the paralysis state does not prevent all motor function. Finger movements, partial arm movements, have been reported during episodes. It is not impossible that Adam used his phone during the episode without full conscious awareness, in the way one can perform habitual actions during sleepwalking. If that is what happened, the photographs are real. The dark shape in the sequential photos is real. The progression of the figure approaching is real. And what approached him in his paralyzed state, what the photographs show getting closer, frame by frame, until the last photo shows a face very near the lens, is something I look at and cannot fully explain. The face in the last photograph is the image that stayed with me. It is not a horror movie monster. It is not dramatic. It is a child's face, slightly wrong in the proportions, eye sockets prominent, looking directly at the camera. Looking directly at whoever is holding the camera. Looking directly at Adam. Looking, in a sense, directly at everyone who has ever seen the photograph. That's the thing about photographic evidence in ghost cases. Unlike a report, unlike a description, unlike even a recording, a photograph creates a direct visual link. You see what the photographer saw. The same image enters both sets of eyes. Dear David has been seen by millions of people. In that last photograph, he is very close to the lens. Very close to anyone who looks at it. I have thought about whether to tell you to go look for it. I have decided not to. If you want to find it, you will find it easily. It is documented. The thread still exists. But I will say this, whatever Adam Ellis experienced over that year, the photographs are the reason the story persists. Not the recordings, not the chair, not the sleep paralysis. The photographs. Because photographs are more real than words. They put you in the room. And the room, in the last photograph, contained something looking back at you. Good night. Check your chair before you sleep. And if you ask a question and don't like the answer, stop at 2. One last thing about the case that I find worth sitting with. Adam Ellis continued to live in that apartment for months after the photographs. He documented everything, posted updates, engaged with hundreds of thousands of people who were following along. And in all that time, despite everything, the recordings, the chair, the sleep paralysis, the handprint on his arm, the photographs, he was never physically harmed. Dear David, for all the terror he produced, never hurt him. The rule was, ask a third question and he will kill you. Adam asked the third question. And David did not kill him. He showed him everything. He made himself undeniable. He filled Adam's apartment with evidence of his own existence. But he did not harm him. I don't know what to make of that. But I find it strangely moving. A dead child who wanted, above everything, to be seen. To be known. To have his story told. He found the right person to tell it. Good night.